Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Defining You podcast. Well, today we have a very interesting episode for you. My guest today is a highly sought after political strategist and host of Politics and Prosecco, Jacquetta Van Zant. Welcome to the Defining You podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm always in a space where other women of color are using their platform, so I'm happy to be here. And thank you for having me. So, as you said, I am the host of Politics and Prosecco. We are a video cast where we talk politics of the day, current events, and try to tie them together to make them make sense. We make it plain. And so I've been doing this podcast. I started it during the pandemic. It kind of started at my kitchen table with my friend Lori Lennon. We were just kind of talking about politics and just kind of ragging on elected officials. And I was like, we should turn this into a podcast because I'm sure we are not the only people that think this way or feel this way, especially about current events and current political hot topics. So that is how Politics and Prosecco started. And Lori got another job where she just could not give the time.
I know.
So I took the podcast on and made it a little bit sassier and a little bit more in your face.
Yes.
It's not a gotcha show. It's more of a.
I think it's you being you.
Where,
you being authentic.
Being authentic, asking really tough questions, but it's kind of like the girl next door with a wink. That's kind of how I think of it. Sure, let's talk, but I'm going to give it to you.
Absolutely. And I saw that and I'm like, wow, she's very sassy, but you have a very good attitude about it. So the personality comes right through. So good. You look like you have so much going on. What is it that attracted you to politics?
I kind of fell into politics. In high school, I had a history teacher, and he was very involved in local politics. And I had detention one day. And my detention was to make these persuasion phone calls for the Clinton campaign. So for those of you who don't, that's how old I am, because I was able to vote for Bill Clinton's second term. And so I realized that I just liked it. I was able to persuade people. I knew I could talk. I knew I could persuade people to do what I wanted them to do. And I was somewhat knowledgeable about politics, but not like I am now. And I was able to just kind of make it plain for people. Why do you want to vote for Bill Clinton? Here are all the things that I think somebody like me going into the future would want. I was a teenager in the 90s, right? So, and I graduated college very early part of the 2000s. And so I knew that we were the millennials that were going to come into all of the things that he put in place. And so that is kind of how I fell into it. From there, when I got to college, I started just volunteering on campaigns. I knew that if I was going to do this full time, I needed to know every aspect of campaigning. I needed to know scheduling, field, finance. I needed to know strategy, data, why all these things matter. Because it wasn't just about the issues. Right. It was about how do you piece all these things together. And that's just how I am as a person. I'm very strategic in everything that I do. To my detriment, almost. It plays out in everything. It plays out in friendships. It plays out in relationships. It plays out in places that get me into trouble. But
good trouble, I hope.
Good trouble. Sometimes, and then there are people who walked away from me because I am compartmentalizing them in some way, and it's not intentional, but it's more of it's safe, it's comfortable. If I know what Plan B is, I can execute Plan A. And so that's just kind of how I operate. I think it's also just my Cancerian nature. But so I knew I needed to know all these things. So I started just working on different campaigns. And I knew I didn't want to run. I didn't want to be an elected official. I wanted to be the person behind the scenes, because to me, those were the bosses. Like, it didn't matter what it was all about the guy who's writing those speeches. It was about the kid researching that policy. It was all like, those were the people that were making things happen. And so I wanted to be part of that cool kids club. Didn't want to be in front of the camera at all. I just found that was the boring job, right? You get up and you say the same stump speech 5,000 times. And what do you get from it? So
you want to be in the creative, that creative space. But I want to go back quickly to what you said, because your detention was what sparked your interest. Isn't that interesting? So that really wasn't a punishment, actually.
No, it's funny. Like, I think God has a really, he's very specific in how he brings blessings into your life.
Absolutely.
And the vehicle that he uses sometimes may not be the most fun,
to us, but he knows what he's doing.
Right, but it's all in his plan. And so we have to, so in this instance, the vehicle was my teacher and my bad behavior, and which caused the detention. And as a matter of fact, I don't think it was something that I did. I think I had challenged this teacher in particular about a political issue.
Okay.
And at O'Brien, because that's where I went to high school. I went to John D. O'Brien School of Math and Science. Shout out to the Tigers.
And for those of you who are not in Massachusetts, he's talking about Massachusetts.
Yes. It's a Boston exam school. And so, at O'Brien, we had a very structured day. It was all about math and science, but you had a very structured day. And so we had history and civics, and my history teacher was a very authoritarian type of Black man. And we all loved him, and he challenged us. He wouldn't just let us get away with an answer. You had to explain why you thought this way. This particular instance, I remember exactly what we were talking about. We were talking about the Selma March. And this was before, when everyone still thought the Selma March was about voting rights. I knew that it was sparked by the killing of Jimmy Lee Jackson. And many people don't know that, because in school they give you the history that they want you to have.
Right.
And I remember specifically saying, like, this was about police brutality. And he was like, ma'am, we're not doing that here today. But I just kept challenging, so I ended up with detention. And
and look where it has
not for the reason, but for mouthing off.
Yes, for knowing too much.
For mouthing off.
Yes.
For sassing him. So, but look, Mr. Hall is probably one of my most favorite teachers, and someone I looked up to greatly, because it was important to me that I had representation like that in education.
Yes. I hope one day you connect with Mr. Hall, and then you go back full circle with that story.
It'd be great.
I think it would be
somebody told me they saw him at Stop and Shop like a couple of years ago, and I was like, darn.
You guys need to reconnect. That's such a wonderful story. I love it. You've been so involved in politics, and I would listen to some of your podcasts, and I noticed that you're very passionate about women of color getting into politics. What is it about that is so important to you, that women of color become involved in politics?
So my first ever protest march was with my grandmother. My grandmother was the president of her NAACP chapter in Memphis. She was very involved in politics, and my mother was born and raised in Memphis during segregation. And so my grandmother was very adamant that you speak up. My grandfather was on the Chamber of Commerce. My great-grandfather, also very involved in politics. We owned a ton of land, so they were also landowners, homeowners, but they were still in this very segregated area. And it didn't matter how much wealth you had. To white people, you were still just Black or poor or whatever. And so my very first protest march was with my grandmother, who must have been in her 70s by then. And I was 8. And my grandmother put an American flag in my hand, and she repeated the words that we would chant. I can't remember what they are now, but I'm sure it was something like, the people united will never be defeated, something like that. I don't know what it was. And I asked my grandmother, why are we doing this? Like, what is the point of this? And my grandmother said, you will always be Black, and you will always be a woman. And because of that, you will always have to speak up for yourself, because I can't do it for you. And that was just like why I knew this very example, my grandmother being 70 years old and with all her wealth and all her prominence, she was always looked down upon by the white people in her area, even though she had more money than they did. And she had more prominence. But my grandmother at that moment reminded me and taught me who I will be in this world, and that without my voice, they will win. And I was not going to have that.
You may have said it, but what did your grandmother do?
For a living?
Yeah, you said she was prominent, and I just wanted
to. She was president of her NAACP chapter in Memphis.
Oh, that explains it.
And so she was just very prominent in the community and in society, and it was her thing.
So I'm seeing a theme. You don't become that sassy on your own. You were being groomed from a very early age, from your grandmother teaching you to learning from your teacher, and I could see something building there. That to really help you form those years.
For me, women have always been prominent in my life. I have 5 sisters. My mom is one of 5 sisters too. She also had 4 brothers. I come from a family where the women dominated everything that they did. And so I understood the strength of female friendships, female relationships, and I understood the power that women have in numbers. And so I was able to translate that in every aspect of my life. And so even today, I value my friendships, my female friendships extremely, because we all are having the same struggle every day. We are all reaching for something.
We certainly do.
And without each other, no matter what your color is, no matter, wherever you are in society, without each other, we're not going to get ahead. We talk about this when we think about a woman running for president one day. I have stated on record and off record that I do not believe that we will have a female president through the traditional campaigning. She will come through the vice presidency. And whether that's Kamala or anybody else, that is the path, because this country has to do things in the way that it is formed and structured, unfortunately. And so that's where we are. But I'm thinking it's going to be Stacey Abrams, but that's just me.
That would be something, wouldn't it? Something, I'm speaking to you and your passion is just coming right over. You excite me, so I can just imagine you being on a campaign trail or working with someone that you're really passionate about and really supporting their platform. That's like one of the key ingredients I would think you would need.
Absolutely, yes. You have to be you have to want to do what you're doing.
Yes.
You have to want to do it.
Yeah, I feel like I like politics, but I don't think I would survive in politics because I'm very emotional and I have feelings and maybe you have to be very grounded and maybe I'm thinking there are so many misconceptions about politics and people have reservations about getting involved in politics because it's so messy. And can you talk about that? And for people who might have an interest, but they might just have so much fear because of all the things that we are seeing, especially the politics of today. Can you just talk about that for a minute?
Well, yeah, I think the truth of the matter is politics is messy, and it should be, because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with people's livelihoods, and everybody has an opinion. And so I think that everyone should go in knowing, like, listen, this is going to be messy. What I think is important, what I think everyone should keep in the back, how I think about politics, is everyone has a common goal, which is for everyone to live comfortably.
Yes.
It's not how you get there. It's the end goal. It's just everyone living comfortably. And whether that is you sitting on your front porch, spitting into a jar and smoking a cigar all day, if that's your end goal, let's get you there. Some people have an end goal of wanting to be a CEO or president of a corporation. If that's your end goal, that's fine. We all have the same end goal. How we get there is where it gets messy, because what we haven't done in this country is really equal the level. We haven't leveled the playing field. We don't practice equity. If we did, we'd have a bigger middle class. We don't have a big middle class right now. I was talking to my friend about this, and I said to him, there is something to be said about the fact that millennials are now the biggest middle class group in the country right now. Look at that. it is because many of us have chosen not to be married, not to have kids. Some of us have chosen not to buy homes. I bought a home. But we have more disposable income because all we have to worry about is ourselves.
Right.
Besides my house, I don't have anything else or anyone else to worry about. I'm not accountable to anybody. I'm not accountable to any children. I don't have to feed anybody at the end of the night. So whether I eat cereal or steak, I've fed my whole family. And that is why the millennials have been able to sustain their middle class bracket.
That's
and
very
also,
interesting.
millennials are not 18 like people think we are.
Right.
You're between 35 and 42. And so, think about that. Most millennials are further along in their career than their parents ever were.
Yes, that is true.
Many of them hold executive positions at 40. They have multiple degrees. So there comes a standard of salary expectation with millennials as well. But in this country, we don't have equity. And so how we get to the end goal is where it gets messy, where political lines are drawn. And it can turn people off. I get that. I like a good political fight because I want to say my piece. I think as despicable as many of the Republicans in Congress are, they still are speaking their mind. And in this country, people are able to do that.
That is true.
The KKK is very despicable, but they are speaking their minds. And so with the GOP, I think what is interesting to me is, and how they keep staying ahead of the game, is they are able to walk in and create a wheel, right? Like what we don't do, they have spokes in the wheel. My name is, Representative Gary, Gary Changemaker. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm a Republican. I believe in gods, guns, babies. And those are my three things. And I'm not going to deviate from any of that. I've now been elected. There are 3,000 people in my county. I'm family with half of them. So I know I'm going to get elected. I have an office now in Washington, D.C. I'm going to hire Jesse. Jesse is going to come in, work my campaign, work my office, and then I'm going to tap Jesse to run for my seat. And he's going to continue my legacy because I can't stay here forever.
I get it.
So Jesse's going to continue my legacy. So now I've created a wheel. Democrats have said, my name is Sarah Change Agent. I care about everybody. I'm friends with everyone. I don't see color. I don't see gender. I don't see anything. I live in a big major city. I used to be mayor of that city. So I know these people are going to vote for me over and over again. And I know that they care about three things. They care about equity. They care about, being able to have a coffee, whatever on there. They're very liberal. We all wear backpacks, and all we care about is making sure people see the image of us being a liberal. I'm going to go to Congress, and I'm going to be a U.S. Senator. And so now that I'm a U.S. Senator, I'm going to hire 3 people in my office, but I'm not leaving. I'm just going to make sure that they keep doing what they do. And then I will mold them into be great political operatives because I need to die in this seat. Because nobody else can now have this seat. But
that is very, very an interesting take.
And that's the difference. And that is why we don't have any equity, because these two people have the same goal, which is to make their constituents comfortable. They have different ways of going about it. One wants to create a legacy, and one wants to be the legacy. You can't do it that way. So that's a very long way of saying
no, but that's an interesting take on it. So sometimes I see people get into politics, and sometimes they get into office because of the funding, that the money that fund that campaign. So can you tell us about that? Do you need a ton of money to run a campaign for office, or is running for office the only way to get into office? If not, what are some of the other ways?
So no, you don't need a ton of money to run for office. Different campaigns cost different, you have to fundraise at a certain level. On the federal side, yeah, you need a lot of money because you need to get up on TV. You need your message out. And so a lot of times when you see people raise these exorbitant amount of money, it's for TV ads. It's not like they're putting any of that money back into the community, which is why I disagree a lot, because I feel like whatever monies people have left over from their campaigns, they should reinvest that back into their communities. But I would be in the minority for thinking like that. So the fundraising really depends on what kind of level of politics you're trying to get into.
Okay.
The other part to that is, can you run? There are other ways that you can get into office. Yeah, you can wait for somebody to die and then get appointed, or you can take the road that many people do, which is to work like a workhorse in politics, and an opportunity comes up, you hold the people that you've been holding on a pedestal accountable,
right?
And say, I need you to endorse me for whatever seat. In Massachusetts in particular, we don't challenge a lot of people, which is why it took Ted Kennedy dying for us to really see a shift in politics. Because before that, nobody moved. Everybody stayed where they needed to stay. And so this man dies, and it's a shift. John Kerry gets pulled up for the first time as senior senator. And then I think he's only there for a few minutes. And then Barack Obama pulls him, making Elizabeth Warren now a U.S. senator with almost minimal time in office. So, there are a couple ways you can get in there. But, I suggest the traditional way of just running and challenging some of these people who have been in office.
Like Ayanna did that. And I remember
Ayanna did that.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping more people take her lead. Like, she had no fear. But I'm going to tell you, there are people who look like you and I who were telling her, don't run against him. He's an institution.
Okay.
He's been there forever. And what she said was, to hell with all of that. I see that there needs to be a change. And she did that. And that is why, for me, I will always pick up her phone call. I will always answer her email. I will always send her a text message, because I need somebody like that who's fearless enough,
right,
to do it.
And then we have Sandy, who's running up against her boss. And
yeah, so that's going to be an interesting race. And I'll tell you why. First of all, let me just say, Sandy is a really smart woman, right? Like, she's really smart, and we want more smart women to run. What I foresee is Sandy's going to have a bit of a challenge there, because the sheriff is likable. He has taken his time in office to build political relationships, and that will sustain him in this race. And so my advice, if I were advising Sandy, I would have told her, don't run. He's not going to be here for another 6 years. He has bigger plans, whatever they may be. Tell him you want to run for this seat. Let him get you in the seat. Because sometimes...
So you're taking the Republican approach.
Sometimes you need someone who already has that platform when when you don't have one as strong. You need them to boast you up.
Yeah.
I wish them both the best of luck. I know both of them. I'm friends with both of them. I think it's one of those things where it's like, ooh, girl, that's a tough one.
I listened to your conversation with Sandy, and I listened to your conversation with the current Suffolk County Sheriff, and he seemed pretty confident and comfortable in his role. And I see, like you said, Sandy is intelligent, but I think what she doesn't have is the recognition and all the work that the sheriff has done. So I can clearly see where you're coming from. But like you say, if you don't start, how are you going to know? She might surprise us. Who knows?
She might surprise us. And listen, I'm glad she's challenging, right? Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe in a seat because you're an incumbent. If anything, you should be scared as hell that there are people out there who want to challenge.
I just love you.
But I think there are, what we have to do, especially here in Massachusetts, is we don't coalesce enough where we have a small group of people who are saying, okay, let's build this pipeline of people that we're going to run. So, Helena, I know you want to run for town clerk in Situate. I'm just trying to think of these places that are not cities. I know we can get you there, but what we're going to do is we're going to run, Stephanie for mayor of Boston first. While Stephanie's doing that, I need you to work on Stephanie's campaign so you can build up your network, build up your funders, build up your time, and build up your message. So that once Stephanie runs and wins and you run for town clerk, boom, you've got her donor list and you've got her endorsement. So now let's run you. We don't do it that way. So we don't have anybody building a pipeline or coalescing around it. We have no black and brown political elected power here. And that
so why don't you start one? Why don't you start one?
Listen, I'm happy to start one. What I don't want is people to say, well, Jacquetta, you should run. Because I'm not going to run.
Okay.
I want to be the person, I want to be Sean Curran. I want to be the person behind the scenes being like, you do this, you do that. I consider myself one of those people who sits up in her ivory tower, directing the entire circus. Everything. That is, I'm sort of, what is that person? Like not the circus wrangler, but like just the person that's just, directing all of these things. And it's just all they're falling into place. And I want to be that person. So that's what I'm.
There are a lot of people that may be listening right now, and sometimes you will be amazed at things that people don't know. So can you just give us a little lesson here and give us a little background in what you understand about, for example, would someone being in office be a full-time job, or what is the pay like, and do most elected officials have a full-time job in addition to serving?
So yeah, here on the state level in Massachusetts, the city council, the state reps, and the state senate, those are part-time jobs. They get paid full-time pay for part-time jobs, unfortunately, right? There's no reason why the Boston City Councilors make $100,000 for what is supposed to be a part-time job. But I also know that if it was paid part-time pay, half these people wouldn't run. Just saying.
Okay.
And then on the federal level, it is a full-time job, right? Because you need to be here in your district and you need to be in DC to make votes and all those other things.
Wow.
They are overpaid, I think, for working 6 months a year because they only work half a year.
You got all the information. See, I'm surprised at some of the things you just said. Yeah.
Which is like, if when they say, well, Congress is going into recess or they're not going to be in session, they're on vacation. Like they're not. Now there are some congressional people who, even when they're not in session, they're working in their district. Right. So like we saw that with Ayanna, like even though Congress wasn't in session, she was here hosting events, talking about student debt, like, doing her thing. And then you have some people who are just like, we ain't in session. We ain't in session.
You are almost like Ayanna, but you're just not running.
I'm not going to run now. That's specific. Let her take the limelight. I also have a potty mouth. I'm trying to be very good. I also have a potty mouth, which is why I can't run.
No, don't do that here.
No. I won't do that here. But I'm saying like that is the reason why. Because I will just pop off on someone.
Yes. Okay.
Not a good idea.
I get it.
I'm better in the background because I can drop all the bombs. I
feel you.
I
feel you. Yeah. What are some traits that you think would make a woman of color perfect for becoming involved?
So the first things first is you have to know what seat you want to run for, and you have to really, really dedicate yourself to understanding the needs of that district. It can't just be there's an open seat and I'm going to run. What we need are people who are actually going to be focused on that district and the needs of that district. The other thing is you need to have a network. I can't say this enough. If you don't have a network, it's going to be hard to run. And your network could be your civic organizations, if you belong to the NAACP or Urban League or Chica Project, Amplify Latinx, places like that. That's a network. If you belong to a sorority or fraternity, that's a network. If you belong to a social organization like 100 Black Women or the Links or something like that, those are your networks. So you need to have a sustainable network. Why? You need those people to vote for you, of course, because they can't endorse you, but you definitely need those people to vote for you. And you got the money. You got, professional organizations have people who are professionals so they can write you a check. The other thing that you need is to have a message. And it can't be the rhetoric that we keep hearing over and over and over again. You don't own student debt, right? Ayanna owns student debt. That's her message right now. That's what she's working on. So you can't say, well, I believe in student debt. Well, you're running for dog catcher. So how does that relate? You need to have a message. And then last of all, you need to be surrounded by people that you know are either as smart as you or smarter than you.
Yes.
And you can't be intimidated by them. I worked on one campaign recently. And this chick thought she was the smartest chick in the room. She didn't know a thing. And it wasn't that she was not a smart person. She wasn't smart about politics. And anytime we challenged her about something, she became defensive.
Wow.
And so I said to myself, this chick is either going to be in this office for the rest of her life because it's a small district and nobody cares about it, or she's not going to last very long because somebody smarter and more polished is going to come in and destroy her chances.
Wow.
I wish everybody the best. But when you open yourself up to that, when you're not open to being led sometimes, and Black women in particular, we have a problem with that because it is in our DNA to be at the forefront. During a lot of brothers get credit for the civil rights movement, MLK and all those other people, but it was Black women on those battlefields.
Yes.
There was a lot of generals, but on the field, the soldiers were the Black women, as we are continuously today.
That is
but
true.
We can't say that out loud because brothers,
well, I think
we need the world on their shoulders. So.
We need to say it out loud, I think, so that we can get people fired up and ready to go. What are some things that people don't know about the city of Boston administration that you wish more people were aware of?
I wish that you knew that there were more jobs available inside of City Hall that could benefit from a diverse staff. What I think Michelle Wu is doing better than a lot of other mayors is she's actually being intentional about diversifying her staff.
I love that word.
Whether or not she hires the person of color is a different story, but she is being intentional. She is utilizing organizations and corporations with niche job boards to get the word out to say, like, there's a chief of blah, blah, blah. And I think that that's smart. Do I agree with some of her hires? No, I do not. However, I do like the fact that she's being intentional about diversity. And I think that is important.
What's your concern about some other people she's hiring?
I don't think some of them are qualified. I think some of them are good at talking about what the issues are, but have not really done the work. I'm all for all of us rising and being empowered. But if you're just talking about the work and you actually haven't done any of the work, I can't trust that you're going to get it done. Because rhetoric means, look, taxes just went up in Boston. Property taxes just went up in Boston. And this has been on my mind because I just got my tax bill. And I thought to myself, okay, one of the things that she's trying to do is rent control. And she wants to do a pipeline to home ownership. But the taxes just went up in Boston.
Yes, that is, it's ridiculous. I know about that.
when I got my tax bill, I was like, well, I guess I can't go and buy a new pair of shoes. But it's one of those things where it's like those conversations go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they tell you go buy a house. They don't tell you all the things that have to happen. They don't tell you, oh, you need to make sure that, you know, you have a little savings bundle for fixing things. Boston has a lot of old houses. And so a lot of them require work. They don't talk to you about, you know, if they do rent control, what areas are going to be most affected. Boston has a huge elderly population, and they own homes, and some of them rent those homes out. But, you know, they might still need, you know, income coming in. They rely on that income. Or what about the landlord who still has a mortgage to pay and the rent is covering it because you've put a cap on how much people can rent at? Or how about you retain talent in the city of Boston so that people can afford to live, work, and play here? There's a myriad of conversations that have to go around outside of a soundbite. You know, I just think even with the whole eviction moratorium that happened during the pandemic, I heard all these city councilors, don't worry about it. We're not going to evict you. Not thinking about landlords who had to pay their mortgage. Or telling these people, put your money in an escrow account so that when the eviction moratorium is lifted, you can pay what you owe. None of that conversation happened. And so what has happened? Now evictions have started. And now all these people are being displaced. Meanwhile, city council still has their homes, their apartments.
If someone wanted to become involved in politics or to be a strategist like you, what is their first step?
Call me. No. So the first step, I think, in order to be a decent political strategist, because I'm still learning too, is you have to get to know every aspect of the campaign. You have to know every part of it, because in order to have the holistic photo of what it's supposed to look like to get to the win number that we call it, you have to know how scheduling affects communications, how communications affects data, how data affects, data affects fields. You have to know all these things. It's almost like, oh, it's connected to my thigh bone. So my first thing is get to know campaigns. And the way you can do that is start working on local campaigns. Start small. Work on small district city council campaigns. Work on a DA's campaign. Work on, you know, and don't, all the jobs on campaigns are not sexy. There are literally kids on campaigns who all they do is Google opposition research. But I got to tell you, those are the smartest kids in the world. Yeah. They could tell you how to be shady towards your other candidate in a heartbeat. Those are the kids you want to know.
That's
because
good to know.
you can drop a bomb on somebody just because that's how dirt gets dug up. There are kids who literally
that's why I couldn't get involved in politics. I don't know. I mean, I don't have dirt, but I mean, people throw slime, and I just wish that, you know, sometimes we build candidates up and then we just, you know, throw so much dirt on them.
The goal is to win, right? It's not, no competition is fun, is nice. It's not, you don't see the guy on the football field saying like, dude, after I break your leg, like, let's go out and get a beer. Like the goal is to win. If I need to break your leg in order to get down the field, to get to my goal, I got to do that. So look, it's not always nice, and it's not always fun, and it's not a pleasant place to be sometimes. It's a sausage factory. The goal is to win. That's the goal. And however you get there talks about your character. Look, I don't want to break people's legs, but I'm certainly not going to let you, I'm not going to let you win.
You sound like you don't want to break it intentionally, but you will break it if you have to.
I'm competitive. I will always get what I want in the end.
Okay.
But and I will always do it with integrity, right? Like I'm not saying that, you know.
No, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
But I will say, you know, listen, I have slipped notes to candidates in order to cut somebody deep. I always have receipts.
Oh
Anybody who comes
my
in my day,
goodness, you
they
are
should
too
know
much.
I
So, um, you know what? What do you enjoy about this line of work?
I like what I do. I'm passionate about politics. I believe in community. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I do what I do. I don't really care too much for political people. I do
Mm-hmm.
like politics though. And when I say political people, it's because we all wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a facade. You know, you ever seen like local artists? They always look fly and fresh. And
Yes.
they got so much swag. And then you see them in real life and you realize it's a facade, right?
Yes. We have to dress it up.
Like I take my mask off when I'm with my
Mm-hmm.
kids. That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly right. Everybody got a Damon Dash
Right.
facade.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I feel about political people.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their best mask on.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like political people.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly like politics.
What is one thing people would be surprised to know about you?
That I'm an equestrian. Everyone asks me this question, and when I tell them, they're like, "What? I ride horses.
You do. How did you get
I ride
involved
horses."
in that? Wow.
I don't know. I think I've just been doing it as a kid. Like I ride horses on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis,
Mm-hmm.
and I never take photos, and I never tell people when I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
It is my way of relaxing, and so
I love
I
that.
I tell people, and they're like, "You're an equestrian?" Like, I'm an equestrian.
Nice. So, I really enjoyed this conversation with you. And I hope I can talk to you some other time about something more pressing and maybe something that's happening that we probably should talk about. I wanted to ask you, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to share?
This is going to be a very busy year in politics, and I implore everybody to
Mm-hmm.
really pay attention and hold the people accountable who are running for office. I don't care if they've been in office before and they're running again. Question them about what they've done and ask for proof of it. And you'd be surprised that some of these people don't deserve your vote and don't deserve to be reelected.
Mm-hmm. What is one thing that will make you not want to work with a candidate?
If I find out that they're in it for the money and not the community.
That's a good reason.
That's a big turnoff for me.
Yes.
I've been turned off by a few people lately. So
I love the fact that you speak your mind. I like your confidence. I love your passion. And I like your authenticity, because sometimes we don't always get that. And I like to see you bring yourself with you. And, that really makes me, you warm my heart by just being you. So thank you so much. And before we go, one last question. What's next for you?
I am working with Tanisha Sullivan, who's running for Secretary of State. So I am focused. That is my only campaign I'm working on this year. And I'm focused on that one. And I might be, supporting some other people, but that's for me, just building up politics in Prosecco, building up my audience, working with Tanisha for her campaign, and just being Black and proud.
You know what? It was so nice talking to you. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come up and speak with us. I know people are going to enjoy this episode. So wish you all the best.
Good.